Hello, my friends. Yes, the day has finally arrived. Today, we're going to be going over my EQ process in Davinci Resolve 17 and also how you can save audio effects. But firstly, I'm going to show you how my audio goes from this. Okay, so this is my audio sample to sounding like this. Okay, so this is my audio sample. Bad, not bad at all. So without further ado, let us indulge, my friends. Oh, look at this. I've got a change of clothes. Yes, this is actually my third time recording this, but don't worry. We're going to get this right. Do or die. We're going to get it right now. So, welcome to Davinci Resolve 17. Today we're going to be spending the majority of our time within the Fairlight audio page because this is the exciting EQ process tutorial. So without further ado, let us indulge. Okay, so we're currently in the edit page, as you can see right here. And to get to the Fairlight audio page, all we need to do is find this kind of music icon right here. So it's right next to the last and final delivery page is the Fairlight audio page just to the left. So click onto that and you'll be presented with this. So welcome to the Fairlight audio page. My Fairlight audio may look, I know for a fact my Fairlight audio page is going to look incredibly different to yours. So let's firstly go through how to set yours up to look exactly like mine. So first things first, everything in the top left corner here, so the media pool, effects library, index, sound library, ADR, we do not need any of these. Make sure these are disabled. Next, go all the way to the right hand side and make sure your meters is on, because I like to be able to see my audio levels at the top here. So if I play my audio back. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue. You can see the meters here, right in the control room, right in the loudness. That's what we want, because I like to see a little visual representation of what's going on. Bueno, perfect. Okay, next thing I'm going to enable is the mixer. So here, if you click onto the mixer, it's going to open up this panel on the right hand side. And this actually is where we're going to be affecting all of our parameters to get the perfect, crisp, sensational audio. So make sure mixer is enabled. You can actually also see your volume levels here as well. So if I play back audio, absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this. Yep. So you can see your audios right there. 2 different places, 3, 4, 5 different places if you want. This just gives me a nice visual representation, but we do need the mixer anyway, because we're going to be using all of the processes in here, such as the EQ. But we're going to get to that in just a second. The next thing we need to set up is our timeline view options. So find this icon right here and copy these settings exactly. So everything which is highlighted, please highlight on yours. Everything which is disabled, please disable on yours. So for example, I have stuff like a full waveform. If I click this and enable it, you can see that my waveform expands a little bit, so you can see a bit clearly. We have the audio scroller, which is here, which when enabled, you can see at the bottom here, we have an audio scroller. So when I play my audio back, you can actually see it move in real time. And it's quite nice actually. Absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying. Not only this, my friends, but you can actually scroll back and forth, which is, it's kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's kind of fun. Zero clue what I'm gonna. But again, you have a bit of a visual representation of what your audio is gonna look like. You can actually have a video scroll as well. I would recommend this maybe if you have, videos, but for this sake, see, video scroller. But for this sake, we're only going to be working with audio, so I'm not going to have the video scroller enabled. So I'm going to turn this off. So make sure your navigation options are these 3 as well. And once we have that, we can finally indulge. Let us get started. Okay, so there are 5 basically main parameters that I adjust in order to get sensational, perfect sounding audio. And they are EQ, noise gate, compressor, limiter, and vocal channel / vocal enhancer. These are the 5 items that I use in order to get crisp audio. And I'm going to be going through every individual one. But before we do, let's take a listen to our audio just to see what we're working with here. So I'm going to play it back. Please excuse, it is quite random. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. We move on. We shall indulge. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause. Okay, that's enough. We're not going to get to the end. We're not going to get to the rest of it just yet, and I'll show you why in just a minute. Let us get started. The first audio parameter that I like to adjust and incorporate within my audio sound is an EQ. What is an EQ? An EQ is essentially an equalizer, and that's found on the right-hand side here. So make sure your mixer is enabled and double-click onto EQ, and it's going to enable this tab right here. So this, my friends, is the EQ, which is the equalizer. And essentially what this is a chart full of frequencies. And how this works is you are manipulating each of these bands, so 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're basically manipulating different frequencies. Everything towards the left-hand side here, so band 2 and 3, is the low end. So this is going to be the bassy, the deep tones, you know, the boomy tones. Everything to the right-hand side, so around band 5, this is the high frequency. This essentially affects the treble, and it's basically a cheat to get a little bit of a crisp sound. Now, an important thing to note is different people have different voices. Some people have a bassier voice, some people have a deep voice, some people have a soft voice. As such, you're going to need to adjust your equalizer accordingly, tailored to specific people's type of voices, because what will work for a softer voice might not necessarily work for a deeper voice. So we're going to be affecting parameters based on my voice. In addition, you may also get a different sound depending on the microphone you're using, because different microphones have different sound signatures. Some microphones are a bit more boomy, a bit more bassy, have a bit more of a radio voice. There's also other things to think of like a mixer, but I digress. Let's just get started. So I'm going to play back my audio and I'm going to be manipulating the lower, and I know my voice and this audio right now. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this. Although it sounds, it's actually, if I'm quite honest with you, it's not bad, but we're going to take it to the next level. It sounds good, but it's lacking a little bit of bass at the moment. So this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to manipulate the band 2 and the band 3 because these are the low end. And essentially I'm going to be moving this right and up and down. Up and down affects how strong we want to manipulate the frequency. Right and left affects basically the influence, how much of the frequency is being affected. So I'm going to shut up now and I'm just going to manipulate this so you can see. So this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. Okay, so straight away you can see that it's manipulating the sound and it sounds terrible. What I personally like to do is move this up because I want it to be a bit more bassy. So just watch as I move this up and listen to how it sounds. Please make sure you're using headphones, guys. In fact, stop right now. Put on headphones right now. Okay, perfect. Let us continue. Zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause. For example, I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. Absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying. Okay, so I'm going to play this. I'm going to turn the effect on and off and just see if you can hear the difference so far. So this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying. It's my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But so straight away you can hear that we've actually got a bit of a bassier sound, but it does sound a little bit muddy and not clear. Have no fear because we're going to adjust the high end now, and this is going to basically make our sound a little bit more crisp. But one thing to note, please be careful when manipulating the high end, which is the band 5 and band 6, because some people are way more sensitive to this frequency than the others. And if it's raised too much, it starts to get scratchy. You know, it's going to sound very irritable. So I'm going to show you what it means. Please, headphone users, be careful right now because it's going to sound super crazy. This is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying. Whoa, you know how crazy this sounds? Disgusting. But you can start to see how we can get like a crisp sound if we don't manipulate this too much. So again, I'm going to show you the extremes of bringing it all the way down. Saying how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. Okay, now that I've shown you how it works, I'm going to actually manipulate this. But before I do, there are some parameters here which I didn't specify and mention before. So if we go to band 4, for example, you can see it says frequency, gain, and Q factor. Now, as you can see, I'm actually eyeballing it and manipulating these values myself by moving the bands literally by hand. But if I was doing a much larger production, whether it's going to be a podcast, TV, film, interview, you name it, if it's a much larger production, I would actually be using these knobs, these frequencies, because you can actually adjust it on a per frequency level. You can get very fine control. So if I go to band 4 and I manipulate the frequency, you're going to see that the frequency of this band is going to move left to right. It's going to have very fine controls. See? You can actually see which of the frequency is affected. It's affecting the frequency around this range right here. See? Very fine controls. It's actually quite nice, but it takes a little bit of time. For final controls, you're actually missing out on a bit of speed. Next, you see it has gain, and gain basically will lift this up and down. So it's going to affect the frequency by lifting it up and down. If I put this up, you can see it's moving it up. If I put it down, it's affecting the frequency down. See, fine controls. And again, you can move the frequency left and right. You can change the bands. Perfect. The last thing you're going to see is a Q factor. And this is basically the area of influence. As you can see, we have kind of like a large curve. If I affect the Q factor by raising it up, it's going to get skinnier. See? So you're actually getting a much narrower influence of your curve. So again, if you wanted to adjust your bands on a per frequency level and get way finer controls, by all means, use these adjustments. But personally for me, when I'm going to be doing my YouTube videos, I like to be fast and intuitive, which is why I tend to move the bands myself physically. So I'm going to reset this back to normal because we don't want to be messing with band 4 at all. Okay, so back to the high end. So right now we currently have this sound.
Example, I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great, but
which sounds decent, pretty far. It sounds not too bad, but at the moment I want to increase my high end. So I'm going to increase band 5. I'm just going to play it back. I'm going to shut up now. I'm just going to manipulate this and you're going to be able to hear the difference until it sounds.
Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great, but here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause and go quiet in between because we're going to be testing one of the things called a noise gate. Absolutely sensational. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great, but here we go. You know, we move on.
Okay, so as you can see, I've been turning the equalizer on and off just so you can hear the difference, and it actually sounds a lot better straight away. It genuinely sounds, I don't know about you, but I think it genuinely sounds pretty good straight away.
Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely, so this is my audio. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great, but here. Okay.
I know by the end of this, you're definitely going to be sick of my voice. You're never going to watch my tutorial again. Okay, but this so far, it sounds pretty good. And we've literally just added one layer of EQ and one effect. So this is literally it, just an EQ. We're next going to be moving on to the next process, which I mentioned that I use to get even better sound. If you remember what that is called a noise gate. So again, if you want to get my settings, literally this is the curve that I use. It may not sound the exact same, again, because people have different voices and different sound signatures, but you'll be able to get a similar sound of this curve. So just follow this curve, all right? Perfect, done. Okay, so now I'm going to close this.
I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying.
Yep, immediately. Yep. Okay, next, on the right-hand side, you can see it says something called dynamics. Now this, my friends, dynamics is where we're going to be manipulating all of the other three that I mentioned. So the noise gate, the compressor, and the limiter. So find where it says dynamics on your audio 1, which is where my audio currently is, where my effects are. And I'm going to double click it and it's going to open dynamics. Bang. And right here, you can see the beautiful dynamics tab right here. So you see we have inputs, output, sidechain. We have this, which is going to give you a visual representation of what's going on. So the first thing we're going to enable is a noise gate. Now this, this is a little bit difficult to explain, but when I show you, you're going to understand it a lot more. Essentially how a noise gate works is you're basically telling a noise gate anything lower than this volume level, cut the sound off immediately. Now, if you remember in this vocal right here, I actually paused a few times. And that's because if you listen carefully, you'll be able to hear background noise, literally the background noise.
We shall indulge. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause and go quiet in between because we're going to be testing one of the things called a noise gate. Absolutely sensational.
So as you can hear, when I stop talking, you hear a bit of background noise, and that's literally my computer because my computer's right here. Now, generally when you're recording, I know a lot of you may not necessarily be in a studio environment, right? As such, you're definitely going to get background noise, whether it's going to be your computer, your laptop, electricity, whether it's going to be air conditioning, or even a fridge. I don't know. I don't know where you're going to be recording, you know, I have no idea, but you're definitely going to have background of some sort. So I'm going to go back to my dynamics. I'm going to double click onto it and I'm going to enable my noise gate. And remember, the noise gate is basically saying anything lower than a certain volume level, cut the audio off. So listen to the background noise once I enable my noise gate. Bear in mind, we haven't changed any settings just yet, just the noise gate right off the bat.
We move on. We shall indulge. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause and go quiet in between because we're going to be testing one of the things called a noise gate. Absolutely sensational.
Did you hear that? No, you didn't. Exactly that. Because it got rid of the background noise. I'm going to play it again and I'm going to be turning off the noise gate on and off, literally. We shall indulge. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause and go quiet in between, because we're going to be indulge. Noise. Literally, just by enabling the noise gate, we have gotten rid of all of that fuzzy sound that you hear in the background, and it sounds sensational. It makes the audio really crisp. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause and go quiet in between, because we're going to be testing one of the things called a noise gate. And straight away, we've just enabled EQ and noise gate, and our audio already has been taken to the next level. If there's one thing you wanted to take away from this tutorial, literally one thing, it is enable noise gate. It's going to take your audio level to literally the next level, literally. But there are a few things that we need to adjust here, because there are some parameters. Now, a few people can actually enable the noise gate and be done with it, but we are not those people. There are a few things that we need to do to make it sound perfect. So right here, you can see we have something called threshold. So the things we're actually going to be manipulating are the threshold, the attack, and the release. We're not going to mess with range. We're not going to mess with ratio. We're not going to mess with the hold. Now, the threshold, you're going to see, is going to be represented by this line. So as I manipulate this, you can see a visual representation of what's going on. So this is basically showing you at what point do we want to cut the audio. This is what the threshold is. So if I manipulate this and I put this all the way up, you're going to see that it's going to try and cut my audio out as I'm speaking. This is not what I'm going to be doing, because it's an extreme example just to show you how it's working. Absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great, but here we go. You can see it's cutting in and out because it's literally trying to cut my audio when I'm going quiet. Because I'm speaking quite consistently and my pauses aren't much, it's dipping in and out. So this is something you may notice if, for example, you enable your noise gate and you're getting a kind of dipping in and out sound. Absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. It's probably because your threshold is too high. So make sure you reduce it. Essentially, what I like to do is I like to look at my output here. And remember, I told you to enable all of these crazy audios to see exactly where your audio is laying. When I play my audio, absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But I can actually see where exactly, oh, there's so many different places to look, but you can actually see where exactly my audio is laying, like where it lays. Where does it peak? Where does it sit in the middle? But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. So I know personally that I shouldn't get my noise gate anywhere near -16, for example, because that's where my vocals are laying. Anything around there, my vocals will start to dip in and out. So I'm going to double that. I'm going to make it -32. So about -32, I'm going to have my noise gate. Why double it? I have no idea, but it seems to work. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. And again, this is going to be on a per use basis, because you may be in different rooms, for example. You may be in an interview. You may have a podcast set up. You're going to have different microphones around. You're going to have different electronics around. So you need to manipulate the threshold just so you can't hear any background noise once you're talking. Indulge. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause and go quiet in between, because we're going to be testing one of the things called a noise gate. There actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause and go quiet in between. It already sounds incredible. Literally, this already sounds incredible. Now, before I go to the attack and the release, please let me inform you of why the noise gate is so powerful. If you were to do this yourself, what would you be doing? You would actually probably cut each individual pause. You see these individual sections? You most certainly will be spending way too much time cutting each individual section and deleting it, or cutting each individual section and lowering the audio. But with a noise gate, it's literally automated. It does it automatically for you, and it's sensational. Not only this, it's perfect for interviews or podcast setup. Podcasts especially, because imagine you have two people in conversation. Generally, once one person is speaking, another person is listening, right? So you have two microphones, but they're on at the same time. One's speaking, one's quiet. This is perfect because the person who's not speaking can have a noise gate on. They can both have noise gates on, to be honest. But the person who's not speaking, the noise gate will be enabled, so you don't hear any background noises of air conditioning or even the other microphone or the other person speaking or picking it up. Absolutely sensational in this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. Okay, so you can see we have attack, hold, and release. Essentially, I told you, I'll tell you what this means. Attack is how fast you want the effect to kick in. So if you have this all the way up, the noise gate is going to kick in immediately. As soon as you stop talking, bang, it's going to kick in. Now this is good, this is cool, but if you put this too high, it's going to sound unnatural and you're going to get a very fast tack and it's going to sound very abrupt. So right now this is 1.4. I'm going to increase it ever so slightly. In fact, I'm going to increase it a lot. Let's see if you can hear when it kicks in and off.
You know, we move on, we shall indulge.
You can see that it's kicking in way too soon.
Actually needs to be apart, however.
And it's bringing the audio back in and out. So remember the problem before we had when the threshold was too high. You're going to get a similar problem if the attack is too high. So make sure you bring this down. I'm going to have mine at about 1.6, 1.8.
Great, but here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge.
So right now it's kicking in and out, but it's not too crazy. Something's happening. You can hear something's happening, but it's not so distracting. And it's doing its job because we can't hear any background noise once there's complete pauses.
Indulge. That actually needs to be apart, however.
But again, it's not perfect. You can still see it's kind of dipping in and out. And this is where the last parameter that we're going to adjust, the release, comes in. So the release is how it eases off, basically. It's going to ease off the effect. So I'm going to raise this up slightly to about 162. And essentially now my noise gate is going to kick in around about here. It's going to attack 1.6 and it's going to ease off ever so slightly.
It sounds great, but here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. That actually needs to be apart, however, where I pause and go quiet in between because we're going to be testing one of the things called a noise gate. Absolutely sensational. I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting some very loud. But yeah, let's test it out, see how it works. Hopefully you enjoy it.
Perfect. So right now our audio sounds incredibly crisp. I'm actually going to turn off all of the effects we have enabled at the moment. So I'm going to drag this, and we only have two, by the way. We only have EQ and noise gate. So I'm going to drag this to our second audio because our second audio doesn't have anything on it. And we're just going to play it back and see how far we've come so far. We are not even finished yet, but so far, how far we've gone.
Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. That actually needs to be apart, however. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. That actually needs to be apart, however, where I pause.
Okay, it sounds great to me. It actually sounds really good, but I can actually hear that my noise gate is a little bit too strong. So again, you might need to go back and forth. I'm just going to bring the threshold down even more
to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge.
Perfect. So now it doesn't cut in and out as much. Now there's one last final word of warning about noise gates. Even though this is absolutely incredible and sensational and it cuts out the sound when you're not talking.
You know, we move on. We shall indulge.
The one thing it doesn't do, rather, is it doesn't cut out your background noise when you are talking. So if, for example, you are in an extremely noisy room and you have electronics running left, right, and center, air conditioning blowing, when you are talking, your noise gate is not active. So you're actually going to hear that background noise once you're talking. It's only when you stop talking and your threshold is at a certain point that it's going to cut the audio off. So this is perfect for the times where there's silence and you're not talking. But if you're talking and there's still background noise per se, it's still your microphone and your audio is still going to pick it up. So please, 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 the noise gate is incredible, but it's not a be or do all. Please make sure that your audio levels are set correctly and you're eliminating as many problems as possible during recording. Okay, perfect. Okay, let us get started onto the next one. The next one is the compressor. So currently we have done the EQ, which looks like this. Sensational. Let me close it for now. We've opened the dynamics up. We've enabled the noise gate. We've manipulated some of the parameters and it's cutting off the audio when we're not speaking. The next thing we're going to manipulate is the compressor. So what is a compressor? Well, I tried to explain this as simply as possible. I'll probably have a link in the description to a video which is more in depth. But quite simply, a compressor brings the highs and lows and averages them together. So the harshest points of your audio and your voice and the lowest points of your audio and voice, and kind of averages them together. Currently, I actually have a mixer which my microphone is going into, and my mixer has a compressor built in, and I've adjusted some of the settings there. So because of that, and for the sake of time, I'm not actually going to be manipulating any of the values here. It's good enough to literally just enable the compressor. You might be thinking, you're crazy. Well, my friend, when we enabled the noise gate, straight away affected it. So why not the compressor? So let's just show you what it does. It's going to be very, very subtle, but we're going to get to a point where my audio is quite dynamic in terms of the voice. I'm going to go up to about here.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic.
Okay, here. So you can see my audio levels go quite high and quite low. So we're going to go back. We're going to turn our compressor on, and let's just see how it works, what it does. Also, by the way, you can see the curve. We have a visual representation of what's going on. It's actually bringing it down a little bit.
I need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud. I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud. I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
So as you can see, it actually compresses the vocals and averages them out, and it sounds pretty good. The difference is quite subtle if you don't know what to look for and what to listen for. If it's not there, you notice, literally. So please, please, please make sure you enable just a little bit of compression. Add the compressor, and it does make a difference to your audio. Trust me. I'm going to have a much detailed video later about my microphone I use, the mixer that I use, and the settings between these two. But this is just the EQ process of, you know, my process in post-production without any audio processing in my mixer. So right now my audio mixer is not doing any EQ processing. We're doing it all here.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud. But yeah, let's test it out, see how it works. Hopefully you enjoy it. Yeah. Absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge.
When you adjust one thing, sometimes something else might break. So the noise gate, since we've added a compressor, we're actually going to need to manipulate our noise gate a little bit more. That should be okay.
That actually needs to be a part, however.
There we go. It doesn't dip in and out as much, and it eases off a bit more. So make sure you're going back and checking just to make sure the audio sounds absolutely crisp. But don't worry, we actually need to only do this once, because after we've done this, we're going to set up presets, which will just happen every single time. But yeah, so we've added EQ, noise gates, and a compressor. Absolutely sensational. But there's one more thing in this dynamics panel that we're going to add. There's two more things we're going to add, but there's one more thing in dynamics that we're going to add. And that's right here. When we're listening to the audio, you're going to notice something.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
Okay, so immediately you saw here it went red, and that is not good.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
Naturally, when most people speak, they have different tonalities, and also their voices can be quite dynamic. When they get excited, typically their volume goes up. Sometimes this is not something you can predict, which is why a limiter is absolutely perfect. Now, what a limiter basically does and how it works is what you're saying is anything at this volume level, when my audio reaches this volume level, bring it down immediately. When it peaks at here, bring the audio down. So a limiter is basically stopping your audio from reaching a certain volume level, which is really impressive and really important. So let me just show you what it does. I'm going to enable it, and just keep an eye on the -10, because remember our audio,
soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
It peaked at around -10. You can see it's getting red right here. So we're going to enable the limiter, and I'm going to show you what it does. Keep your eye on this.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
As you can see, it didn't even reach anywhere near -10. You can see no red. And this is important. It's important. We do not want to see red at all. Ideally, we want your vocals to be around -12, -6 at the peak. You do not want it to get higher than -6 when people get excited and the audio peaks at all, right? So typically keep your voice around -12, and this seems to be working pretty well. As for the visual indicator, you can see here on the left-hand side, when we enable the limiter, we essentially have a hard cutoff point. You can literally see it goes whoop. And again, to manipulate how much of the limiter is affecting, you just need to change the thresholds. As I move the threshold, you can see it's changing how much of the limiter is being affected. So if I play it back,
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic.
For an example's sake, just to show you how crazy this is, I'm going to put it all the way to -30 and what?
In terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
So you can see it's bringing the audio down a lot, but the audio sounds a lot compressed, which is not what we want. So make sure you manipulate it to a point where you think will sound good. Ideally, just keep your eye on the output. You do not want it to hit the red, basically. When you see red, that's a bad sign. Just manipulate it so it stays within the yellow range. So again, -12 is where you want to be.
Dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
Nope, compressor's too much. Let's lift it up.
Being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
I'm going to put up a little bit more. Because again, you don't want to be putting the limiter too high because you do still want a variation in the volume of somebody's voice. Otherwise, it sounds a bit robotic.
As well as very harsh and getting very loud.
Perfect. So right now, it's almost reaching -10 and we're still in the yellow zone, which is a good sign.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
That's with it on, with it off. Let's see where it goes.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
Yep. So the limiter is pretty good. Again, really and truly, having it where it currently is for me without the limiter,
as well as very harsh.
Here isn't actually, honestly, it's not too bad. We could technically go to about -6, but you can't go anything higher than that because then the audio starts to get distorted and it sounds terrible. Absolutely terrible.
In terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
Perfect. So speaking of the audio sounding terrible, much like the noise gate, if you mess up during your recording, it's very difficult, if impossible, to bring your audio back. So if, for example, you're recording audio and your microphone is way too loud or your gain is too high and your audio as such gets distorted, there's no amount of limiter that you can put on to remove the distortion and bring your audio levels back. So it's always important to note when you're recording, keep your audio levels around -12 and -6 at the peak. Do not go higher than that because once your audio peaks and distorts, you cannot bring it back. Even if you have a limiter on, you won't be able to bring the distortion sound back. So that's important.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud. But yeah, let's test it out, see how it works.
You can also see that we have the attack, hold and release. Remember those? Yep. Exact same thing for noise gate and compressor. Again, the attack is how fast we want the limiter to kick in.
I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud.
The release is how you want it to ease off. For me, I actually find the default settings to be actually pretty good. I'm not being lazy here, I promise. The default settings are actually pretty good. But again, it varies on the person that's speaking, the environment that you're in. So this is on a per person basis. For me, this is what works. Literally. So we have EQ, we currently have a noise gate on, we've got a compressor, we've got a limiter on. Again, let's see what it sounds like with and without. So this is without.
I also need my voice to be quite sensational. I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud. But yeah, let's test it out, see how it works. Hopefully you enjoy it. Yeah. Absolutely sensational. I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting very loud. But yeah, let's test it out, see how it works. Hopefully you enjoy it. Yeah, peace.
Perfect. Absolutely. You can hear how incredible it sounds, but hold on. We are not finished. No. We still have one more thing to add. Yes, just one more thing. So we've added EQ, we've added the noise gate, compressor, limiter. We're going to add one more thing, which is a vocal channel, which is kind of like a vocal enhancer. So to do that, make sure your mixer is open. Go to the effects, and here you'll be presented with all kinds of crazy and different effects that you have within Davinci Resolve. You can add more modulation, even further noise reduction, imaging processes, dynamics, another compressor if you wanted to. You can even add a delay, and this is kind of crazy. Watch this.
Things called a noise gate. Absolutely sensational. Zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this.
See how crazy this is.
Or if it's even going to sound great, but here we go.
It kind of sounds like, you know, those movies when you're in like a giant room and the microphone's on. Is this thing on? You know, the microphone's on, is echoing all over the place. Yeah. Anyway, you have a lot of different effects and presets that you can use and parameters to change. I'm going to have a video very soon on sound design, everything to do with sound design and different types of editing with sound design. And we go through quite a few of the effects. But for now,
what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to...
This is kind of crazy. Anyway, the reason why we need effects is because we need a vocal channel. So click onto the effects, go to channel, go to vocal channel, and you will be presented with this. Yes, this actually basically is another EQ, quite simply. You'll notice that we have similar parameters. We can have different bands, but instead of it having literal bands, you have low frequency, mid frequency, and high frequency. So if I go to my EQ, we're actually going to get quite a similar curve to this, which kind of like slopes up like this, goes down and then comes back up. And we're just going to use this to get an added layer of crispness. It's just going to add to the sound a bit more. So again, you know the drill by now. I'm just going to manipulate these sounds as I'm playing the audio, and you're going to be able to see what it sounds like. We'll come back, we'll turn it off and on, see if we can hear a difference.
Yeah. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. Actually needs to be a part, however. That actually needs to be a part, however, where I pause and go quiet in between, because we're going to be testing one of the things called a noise gate. Absolutely sensational. I also need my voice to be quite dynamic in terms of the ranges, being very soft, as well as very harsh and getting some very loud.
So as you can see, I don't know if you can hear it. I can most certainly definitely hear it, but my voice has a complete new layer of crispness to it. I don't exactly know what it is, but I've actually just manipulated my curve to be quite similar to my original EQ curve. So I've added a bit more low end and I've added some high end, and it sounds really, really crisp. Again, I'm going to be turning it on and off. In fact, I'm going to turn it off first, then on, and then on and off during playback so you can see. So off.
Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on.
For me, I can hear it night and day. It's quite crisp. It adds another layer of just crispness to the voice. And with that, we are pretty much done with all of the EQ processes and what I use to make my audio sound sensational. So that's a quick before and after. It's currently sounding like this without any EQ, any processes, nothing on at the moment, raw audio. And remember, in the beginning, the audio sounded okay. It actually sounded decent.
Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge.
And with it back on. Yeah.
Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have...
Oh my God. It's incredible. This is... You can see I'm getting excited. I'm excited for you because your audio is going to sound literally just like this. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, this is absolutely great. Our audio sounds incredible. And your audio sounds incredible now too. But I'm going to need to do this every single time. Every time I record something or edit something in Davinci Resolve. The answer is no, because I'm going to show you how to use presets and how to save audio presets right now, right this second. So once you have all of the effects that you like and everything sounds to your taste and to your liking, remember, you only need to do this once, because the majority of the time you might be recording in the same room, same environment, same microphones. So once you have this set up, you have it set up. So to save audio presets, go to the top corner right here and it says Fairlight. Go down and you're going to see it says preset library. Now here is where you're going to set up your presets. Right now you can see I actually already have one, but we're going to set one up anyway. So how this works is as followed. Click onto where your audio is currently saved. So where your audio presets currently are. Right now it's on audio 1 because that's where our audio currently is and the effects that we've created are. So click onto audio 1 and then click save new. Then press create new. It's going to ask you to add a preset name. So I'm going to name it YouTube EQ. Then press OK. Now you're going to see now we have a new preset right here. So how do we apply this preset to another, audio channel? So I'm going to click onto our preset, which is here. and I'm going to disable audio 1 and I'm going to click onto audio 2 and I'm going to press apply. And just watch here. You can see that it's now applied our EQ curve onto our second audio. So that's how you save an audio and apply an audio preset. However, it's quite tedious because you actually need to do this for everything else. So our dynamics, we're going to need to go to dynamics, go to audio 1. That's where our dynamics are currently saved. Click save new, create new, YouTube dynamics, press OK. And then we can click onto our new preset, go to the channel we want to apply it to, press OK, press apply. Just like that, you can see we now have the dynamics quite similarly to the first audio. Lastly, we need to do the third one, which is the plugins preset, because this is where we have our vocal channel. So again, audio 1, save new, create new, plugins, YouTube. Click onto our preset, click onto the channel you want to apply it to, press apply. Just like that, we now have vocal channel right here. So now if I drag our audio down to the second audio 2, okay, just like that, we actually, okay, so right now it kind of sounds like we have everything. So this is my audio sample, but we don't. Right now we actually need to reset our noise gate, because if I go here, indulge, you can still see we can hear our background noise. So go to our dynamics on our second audio channel, audio 2. I'm going to turn my noise gate on and off, just on and off simply. That actually needs to be up and it's working. I think this is currently a bug in Davinci Resolve. I think it's going to be updated real soon. We move on. We shall indulge. Okay, so this is my audio sample. I have absolutely zero clue what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to explain this, or if it's even going to sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. And just like that, it sounds the exact same as our audio 1. It'll sound great. But here we go. You know, we move on. We shall indulge. So we have spent time creating all of our presets, all of our EQs, our dynamics, our effects. We have now saved those presets, and anytime we want to literally apply this preset to a timeline, we go from the edit page to the Fairlight audio page, click Fairlight, go to presets library, and literally enable it like that. Unfortunately, right now at this point in time, there is not a way to apply your audio presets via the edit page right now. But I do believe very soon in one of the next few updates, you're going to be able to apply your audio presets in the edit page without having to go to Fairlight Audio. But for now, if you want to apply your presets, go to the Fairlight Audio page, go to the top, preset library, and apply it that way. So literally, we have now gone and we've created a really good, really crisp sounding audio. So hopefully this was useful. Right now, I'm going to get changed. I'm going to read some comments. Without further ado, let's indulge. Okay, so here we are in YouTube. Let's take a look at some comments, shall we? Mita says, thank you. Great. Thank you. Well, thank you for watching. This is on my Blender video. Elisa says, Branden, thank you for your video. Do you know if Davinci allows you to customize your screens? No, it actually does not allow you to customize your screens yet. Other than the workflow presets that you can enable, like dual screen, single screen, etc. That's the only customization that we have, but have no fear. I do believe that they're going to be adding that in a future update very, very soon, because it's something that a lot of people have requested. So don't worry about that. They'll probably update it soon. AB says, next video. Oh, got a video right here. Narul says, great tips. Thank you. Motivation Morrison says, how do I add media to my color page timeline? Mine don't show up in a line of media like yours. I believe you're talking about this. So right now you're probably saying you don't see your media at the left hand side. That's because you need to go to media pool right here. If you click on media pool, you'll be able to see all of your media from any of the bins that you've created. So these are some of my bins. Or if you want to see your media that's currently in your timeline, I'm going to close this. Go to clips right here, and you'll be able to see all of the clips that are currently in your timeline, so you can swap in between it. Really simple. Roger Visual says, bruh, you helped me up. Yes, indeed, I do. Mr. Kimono Jr. says, did he just say, who's that chocolate bar? Thank you for the video, sick. Thank you for watching. Castiel says, my Davinci also loves to crash if I go to Fusion tab. I know, it's really bad. I mean, it's not to the level of, you know, Premiere Pro or After Effects, but it does crash at Fusion. But we're still in beta at the moment. So hopefully, very, very soon, once it's out of beta, all of the bugs will be fixed. Anyway, guys, this has been a very long video. I really try to not make my videos long, but this kind of warranted a long video, and a few people have been asking how to do this. So if you like this video, please share your support. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you want more tutorials like this, more Fairlight audio tutorials. Also, link in the description, my LUTs and presets. You can get them on the deal right now. I don't know how long the deal's going to be on, but you can make your videos look sensational. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.